I understand the importance of political campaigns, and I know that it does affect change somehow. But I got to say, for all of the work that goes into those, if you don't win, at the end of the day, you're sort of just left being like, what did we really do? I mean, it comes down to a binary decision at the end. Do you win or not?
Yeah.
And neither of the campaigns I worked on won. The one you worked on won.
Actually, both of the ones that I worked on won.
You
so
picked better than me.
To be fair, I joined later in the game.
Yeah.
No, so we won with the coordinated in Michigan, and then we also won the coordinated runoff in Georgia. But I can completely sympathize with the idea of if you lose, what is the question is, we didn't win. We don't get to enact the agenda that we decided was important to us, and we wanted to spend all of our time pushing and making sure that we enacted this vision for the future. But I also wonder if it's connected to what you were talking about earlier with Optimize, which is just you're too far into it to really have the initial idealism of political campaigns or the end-all be-all, and this is great. And you're not far out enough to understand what movements you might be helping build, what infrastructure you might have put in place that didn't exist before. And to me, when I think of political campaigns, and I start to get cynical about the idea of like, it's just about winning and losing, and if we're not doing this in the correct way, if we're not actually really incorporating communities in the way that we want to, what's the point of calling 500 people a day to get them to vote if you're not really talking about the issues that matter? And I think so much of the political campaigns that I was on, especially during COVID, it just felt like you're going to call everyone and you're going to get them to vote, and we're going to take care of everything else later.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
The urgency of it is really, really strange, but I don't know, once you have some hindsight and once you have some space in between running those campaigns, and just getting to look back at like what you built, if that feels different.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, there's some people who just love the game, which I don't understand. Like I
don't either.
Campaigning for campaigning's sake is brutal. Yeah, I mean, maybe as you get older, you look back and you're like, okay, the things I was a part of did create some changes in the arc of history or whatever. And you can study history and see that, which is what gives you enough belief to even get into something. Yeah. It's like, okay, I've seen that activism and campaigning can change things and that politics can change things. But yeah, you sort of have to take it on history, which is written by people who are creating narratives. Yeah. That was one of the things that I've sort of refocused my attention mostly on Optimize now. Not because I think it's wrong to be involved in political campaigns and that kind of ways of trying to make change, but more so just because with Optimize I can go beyond a narrative. Like we have narratives. Everything in life is stories, right? And like that's how we organize ourselves and everything, and make sense of the world. And so Optimize is always telling stories about what we do also internally and externally, and and that's important. And I believe in that, and I've done a lot of that. But I definitely felt, as part of political campaigns, like so much of that, because you have to get so many people involved as volunteers and also as voters and as people, it's like the narrative is paper thin. It's like you've got your narrative and anyone can poke holes in it because it's paper thin, and most of the people involved don't actually have answers to the hard questions. And it's just like you've got your stock answer that the campaigns will basically give you of like, if someone asks about this, here's the story you tell. Yeah. And it's like you don't interrogate the stories because you believe I want to win. And so like it's worth it to just like stay to the narrative, right? And if the narrative wins, then it's, but you really start to think about the fact that like, well, just like I can attack another candidate's narrative, people can attack my candidate's narrative too. And whereas with Optimize, it's like, yes, we have narratives, but I know the details, and we can actually work on sort of like real things beyond just stories. Yeah. And I think that that's sort of how I'm trying to now move my focus and direction. Yeah. Is like I want to be a part of things where I am part of the actually doing something. Yeah. rather than just like being a messenger of a narrative.
Yeah.
Because even if you win, I was going to ask you this. So my candidate's lost. And so obviously, like you said, we, wanted to enact the change. But even if you win, are you part of the we? Like as soon as the campaign's over, they're kind of like, a very small number of you will actually come and do something meaningful with us, in whatever office we got elected to.
No, I think about that all the time. And to your point about storytelling for the sake of storytelling versus storytelling for the sake of really amplifying work that you think is important, that you have done and backwards and forwards, I'm so much more the latter, than I am the former. And I think about that with campaigns because, I'm not in an administration position. I'm not enacting an agenda. I do work that is tangential to that and kind of works alongside it, and that I feel is important and ultimately guided by the agenda of an administration that I helped elect, which I think is broadly good. But it does, to me, it was really clear going into the 2020 cycle that I wanted to be a part of a political campaign. Right, I was graduating, COVID happened 6 weeks before, and I was actually at an organizing corps boot camp to get trained to be an organizer for the general election when Michigan shut down.
Yeah.
So I missed my last college class, but I just knew that it was important. I knew that it was what I wanted to do, and it didn't really matter if this is what I wanted to do forever. But coming out of it, it's really clear to me that the urgency of political campaigns, the constant need to tell a story and to recruit and to sort of be on isn't my best mode of thinking. I would really much rather sink into a problem and figure out what's the solution here. And I think similarly to optimize, something that was so interesting is as soon as you steep yourself in something, you understand that an issue that you might have thought was really simple at the beginning is actually complex.
Yeah.
And you can chase that question forever if you choose.
Right.
So I think political campaigns ask you to be a generalist, and I'm a bit more interested in finding what really drives me and chasing that until the line of inquiry sort of tapers off, runs out, whatever it is.
Yeah, totally. And, there are people, I guess, who excel at the other stuff, but it just...
And I know some of them, and they're remarkable people that are really good at their jobs and care deeply about the work. But I think at the end of the day, you can't force yourself to do something that's not your best mode of thinking. There are enough problems in the world that we need to solve that find what you like and what drives you and what you're good at and go with that.
This clip came from a longer episode of the Why Not Me podcast. Find it on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.